video teleconference notice for October the 17th at 10 a.m. We welcome everybody, and we're going to call this meeting to order. And before we get started, Tamara, I'm going to let you, if you would, let's start around the room and let everybody introduce themselves and who they represent, or just basically who they represent, or what affiliation they have for today. And Tamara, let's start. Looks like the best way to go would maybe with Robert, and back to the back room, and then come back to you.
All right, so my name is Robert Hewitt. I'm the Director of Planning and Building Code for Franklin County, and I assist with as staff on the Park Committee.
Hello, I'm Scotty Tracy. I'm Magistrate District 4.
Michael Muller, Franklin County Magistrate District 3, and on the Park Committee.
Charlie Lewis, I'm the Lakeview Park Director.
Amy Quatman, County Treasurer.
Let's go back to the back, Tamara, if you would, the audience that are there.
Franklin County Grants Administrator. Robin Antonucci, Frankfurt, Franklin County Tourism Commission.
And Bill called Grand Theater. We use the fine arts tax supporting theaters that tested some way.
Randy Royer, I'm with Hitchcock Design Group.
I'm Eddie Jones. I guess I'm with Randy.
And I'm Tamara Harris, Deputy Judge.
Okay, and I'm Houston Wells zooming in, and it looks like we have Sean Pickens, Jolene Foster, and Allison Deppenbrock also on from the Tourist Commission. And so if people have questions or stuff, if they would just let us know.
Secondly,
You'll be able to help them.
Hold on just a second. Somebody needs to mute their microphone.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now, Charlie, I'll let you start with the kickoff meeting for the creation of the Sports Commission, and turn it over to Randy or Mr. Jones and go from there. All right, Charlie Lewis.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate everybody being here today. First time, very unique committee that we're getting together to discuss the Sports Commission here locally. So exciting time. So we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say as guests, and we appreciate you all coming in from out of town and taking some time to get us pointed in the right direction for at least entertaining the thought of trying to put together a sports commission here locally in Frankfurt and Franklin County. So with that, I'll pass it over to Randy and Eddie, and you guys can I'm gonna hand it off. Score the touchdown. Okay.
Well, thanks everyone for having us in. This is exciting. Obviously, Hitchcock Design Group been working with you for quite a while. And this is really our first step of realizing the vision. So, Eddie? Okay.
But I think I have been brought in, I think, to discuss how to maximize your position with the tourist tax. And so I'm here somewhat to, I guess, present a law school type class, if you will, on the statute that allows communities in Kentucky to create tourist commissions. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Elstover and Graves. I'm from Paducah, and I also have served one term on the McCracken County Fiscal Court. And about 3 years ago, we had a joint city county tourist commission, and we looked at it as both the city and the county, and ultimately unanimously decided, maybe we could create more revenue by creating two instead of one. So I think the first place to start is what the law allows you to do. And I have sent this package, which I put page numbers at the bottom, and what the first section is just sort of my summary of the transient room hotel tax. but really we got to dive into the statute. So if you'll turn in your hymnal to page 3. This is KRS 91A 350. And the section there that's number 2 is the section that allows your community to do one of two things. It says, it basically says in some counties that don't include you, which would be Fayette County, the local governing bodies of the county and of the cities of a home rule class may by joint or separate action establish a tourist and convention commissions. Now, for ease, what I'm going to say is we'll just call this a tourist commission because it gets a little confusing because in McCracken County, we call it a convention and visitors bureau. And then, well, that's what we call it when we had a joint. We created a new one. It's called a sports tourism commission. This statute sometimes uses tourist and convention commission. Sometimes it says tourist commission. We'll just use tourist commission. It all means the same thing. They're synonymous. There is no distinction between the two. The statutes do not create a sports tourist commission. They just create tourist commission. You locally can name it whatever you want to. We chose to do so in McCracken County because that's what we wanted it to focus on. Okay, so the statute says you can do either joint or you can do both. You are presently doing a joint tourist commission. So if you turn to page 5, it says, all right. The first page of the first section of page 5 says, if you establish something, the KRS 91A 352, which was that little paragraph we just read, then you have to do it this way. You don't have a lot of latitude. It has to be this way. You have to establish a 7-person commission, 3 of which will come from the hotel industry, 1 of which will come from the restaurant industry, 1 of which will be generated by a Chamber of Commerce type nomination. And then the other 2 at large will either be, if you have a county, it'll be 2 at large by the judge. And if you have a city, it'll be 2 at large by the mayor. If you have a joint, then they split those. You collect the revenue and you have to, by law, turn it over to this commission. So it kind of protects the hotel industry. And I think I'm telling you some things you already know, but since we're public, I'm going to just give the history. The reason of the 7, so a majority of this commission are invested in this money because they, you've got 4 between the restaurant and the hotel, they can control where the money goes. And that's what the statute wants, because they have the vested interest in putting more beds or heads in beds and more people in their restaurant. So the money that gets collected has to be kept in a separate account. And it looks like in our county, the county treasurer collects it. I was given a copy of your ordinance, which dates back to 1988. And you also, Madam Treasurer, you collect this, and then I take it you guys in the fiscal court disperse it by order. That how it works. Looks like you collect it quarterly instead of monthly here. Is that still?
I don't know.
It is true. That's true as well as the city reported it.
Okay. So does the city collect
Yes.
separate?
Yes. If your hotel property is within the city limits, your transient tax as a hotelier is paid to the city finance director. And if you're a hotelier within Franklin County, outside of the city limit, it's paid to the county.
I got you. Okay. Well, I guess the hotels, Robin, do the hotels that are in the city, so they just pay one tax?
Effectively, yeah, one transient tax.
One transient tax.
That was when the tourist commission was created in the eighties, the ordinance. I believe there's a statement in there, that's basically alludes to the city and county working together.
Gotcha.
for that purpose.
Okay, so. So again, the question then comes, all right, well, we're doing it joint. If we don't want to do it joint, how do we not do it joint? And the first thing, so there's an attorney general opinion, and that begins on page 19 of your hymnal. And this is Attorney General opinions from 2015. And in this case, this involved a question about whether a city could withdraw from a city joint county tourism commission. And essentially what I think Jack Conway was the Attorney General at the time, said you absolutely can. And the documents that you would look to first is look to whether there's an interlocal agreement that created or tells the joint venture how to work. And if that has some provision on how you terminate it, then it's a contract, you follow that. If it doesn't, then it's essentially majority rules. Either party can vote to withdraw from the Joint Tourist Commission. I have looked, so interlocal agreements in Kentucky are supposed to be put on a record and filed with the Department of Local Government, and they maintain a website. I've looked at that website and I haven't seen an interlocal agreement on your joint city county tourism, but you obviously have an ordinance. The ordinance, as I reviewed it this morning, does not speak to how you terminate it. So then I would presume, based upon Jack Conway's opinion, that either party could say, by majority of either the city commission or county, we'd like to step away from this. So, barring some other document that I've not read, I believe that's the course you could follow. Then I think the next analysis is to generate or to ask the question, well, how much would that get us? And I don't have those numbers yet, but based upon the last meeting when I was being surrounded by Daffy Duck, it sounded like your total revenue from both city and county is about $500,000. Robin put you on the spot.
Yes, it, obviously varies by occupancy, but generally, 450 to 500 has been the general trend of annual transient room tax.
So, and based on what you're telling me is that, well, I'll just put it bluntly, these two taxes can stack. It sounds like you're not stacking them. So if $500,000 is the figure that you're presently taking, then the New Sports Tourism Commission, if they imposed the 3% tax, they would essentially bring in the revenue that the CVB is getting now. Then the city would be something less than that,
Yeah, 350, something like
about
that.
350. Okay. So you've got a chance to move your income from $500,000 to about 850,000. And if I'm Robin, go
Well,
ahead.
that would be the total for 850. Wouldn't that be the total for all transient tax, of which 350 would be collected by the city as it is now within the city? And if you stack 3% in the city, that 3% plus the 3% we now have in the county would go to the sports commission. I think that's.
Yeah, we may be saying the same thing. So you get,
maybe, yeah.
so if
Okay,
your city county is jointly both are charging 3% and not stacking, if the county charges 3% and then the city charges 3% and they stack, then I would anticipate the county revenue to be 500,000 and the
Yes.
city revenue to be 350.
Sorry. sorry.
So if I'm Robin, if I'm you, what I would be listening for is, I just want my 500,000. I don't care whether it's 850 or 500, provided my budget doesn't go down.
Right. Exactly.
So essentially, it looks like you could add revenue of about $350,000. If you keep Robin whole.
By doubling the rate in the city. By doing that, the city hotels would be paying twice what they're paying
Right.
today.
That is right. That's right.
700.
The county would be paying the same.
That's right.
And in regards to like the Save the Grand, the Performing Arts Center, that would not be negatively affected at all,
So
correct?
as I understand it, so you're operating.
Mr. Cole.
Fine art tax.
392, the fine art tax.
So you're operating off of the 2% escrow tax that you're allowed to charge because you have a second, so that is a fiscal court tax, not a city tax.
Correct.
It's a fiscal court tax that you get to charge because you're a second class citizen.
Right, and it exclusively is used to make bond payments.
That's
Not to be used for any other purpose.
That is,
Bond issue, we have it, 2032.
if you don't have debt, you can't charge the tax.
That's right, and the tax sunsets upon the payoff in 2032.
So it would not affect that at all. That's a countywide tax.
I don't think so. I've looked at some of your documents in the crack, and it appeared that money was allocated some way from that. I don't understand how that worked, and that was one of the reasons I was hoping you would explain that.
So we have a little more equity, probably in our 2%, in our borrowing capacity with that 2% that we keep tapping into. And it initially was used to fund our Carson Center Fine Arts. And as the revenue grew, the borrowing, the amount of money it would pay debt on also grew. And about 3 years ago, we borrowed another $1 billion to improve the kitchen on our convention center.
They're using it for both then,
Yes,
convention and art center.
yes. And at one time, and this is another issue we had, and I don't know if you have it. At one time, when we built the Carson Center, the 2% was not enough to make the bond payment. So we went to our CVB, Mary, and said, we want some of your money. I wasn't part of the fiscal court then. And the CVB gave a 1/3 of their 3%. And that then created a bond encumbrance on theirs, which we had to go back and get released.
And who's your bond counsel?
Dinsmore, he was at our last fiscal court meeting. I know him by looking at him, but I don't know him by name. But it's Dinsmore. So that's my law school lesson on KRS 91A. I'm out of material. I'm ready for a question if there is one.
So Eddie, to me, this sounds like a whole lot of communication needs to happen. I mean, we have two great resources in this room. I mean, but it sounds to me like this process is all about communicating and figuring out what would be best for this community.
Yeah, I think you're in a situation where we were, there's a win-win here. There's more revenue. Now, there are probably some folks who own a hotel and say, wait a minute, and they'll be the folks that will have a little bit of interest in, wait a minute, this means I've got to charge more money, and that's true. And ultimately, we met their groups, and I guess they're on our list. Once they understood the process and they understood, hey, there's gonna be a new commission, we're gonna basically control the majority of it. And once they saw the plan, they got on board. There were a couple of dissents, but I don't think there's been a strong dissent. I spoke with our city attorney, I guess 2 nights ago, and told him I was coming here. And he and I worked closely on this. And he said, the big concern I had is that we would overprice our hotels with this extra 3%. And that just hadn't happened. It's just not significant enough to cause someone to say, I'm not staying there. Frankly, with the price of gas, you want to be close. So from a Cracken County perspective, it's one of those things when I stand in the room, I said, well, we raised this tax, but frankly, if you didn't rent a hotel in McCracken County, you didn't pay it. And it's a cover charge.
Eddie,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, can the monies that are collected, if this tax is stacked, be used for bond payments? If the fiscal court and or the city want to have a bond to pay for improvements to a park?
Okay. So I will. Hang on, I'll turn this to the right page there. The answer is yes. And it's yes because of KRS 91A390(3).
What page is that?
It's on page 13 of our hymnal.
Okay,
And section 3 says, a portion of money collected from the imposition of this tax is determined by the tax levying body, its fiscal court, upon the advice and consent, and that's important. The advice and consent of the Tourist Commission may be used to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, operation, and maintenance of facilities useful in the attraction and promotion of tourist and convention business. So you can't use it to, in our community, we've got some very rural communities. I always pick on Raglan. If Raglan, which has about 20 folks out in the county, wanted to build a softball field, you couldn't do it because it wouldn't be useful in promoting tourism for the community. But you can build 11 softball fields inside the city. I think that passes the muster of this statute. But it does require, it's not one of those situations where the majority of the fiscal court controls. It requires advice and consent. So you got to have two bodies that vote the majority of it. And obviously, if you do that, Judge, you got to do that with an interlocal agreement. Well, bond council won't let you do it without an interlocal agreement.
mhm, okay. All right, that's my,
Okay.
So I've got a question.
Okay.
On that, can you get a little deeper, and I know you might this afternoon, but like how the interlocal agreement works, that's between the city and the county for doing the things you've been describing, am I right?
Yes. So here's what we did, and this is what basically generated the win-win and the unanimous approval of both the city and the county is the city had an interest at that time. The city had an interest in building an aquatic center. So this allowed them, there was also a large community, population of the community that wanted sports fields. So this allowed the city to say, you know what, the county's going to go their way and they're going to focus on sports fields. And we're going to focus on the aquatic center. Now, the end result of that is that the city changed their mind later and decided they wanted to not do the aquatic center, but join together with the county and build a larger sports field. But I guess in order to get the unanimous consent, I don't know that the county had to. I mean, honestly, I think this is a situation where either party could say, been nice knowing you, but we're not going to date anymore, we're breaking up. But in order to create a more palatable and more successful environment for working agreement, we did an interlocal agreement and allowed the city to help guide us on what our mission would be. And we decided that we would, they asked that we focus on outdoor sports and we agreed to do that.
Okay, and so, I know you've got, has the sports, complex been built, or what's the status of all that now? When did all this happen?
So it has not been built. We started our process, I think we began our day like you're having today was May of 2019. By about November, we were collecting the additional revenue. So it took about 6 months to work through the process, build an agreement, and do the ordinances. Our Sports Tourism Commission for us, the other part of that, Robin, I didn't say, is that the city committed, we're going to the city CVB will stay on track of marketing the area. And doing the advertising, inviting people in
Right.
the marketing budget. So that left the Sports County Commission in a position where it didn't have to hire anybody. So there was, we don't have an executive director. We're essentially using those funds. Well, we've spent about $1 million on some sports courts for a vacant building that we have. We put 4 sports
Right,
courts in
yeah.
the next building. That was about, we spent about $600,000 on sports courts, $400,000 in designing. We were given 60 acres. That was a blessing to us next to the some other city property, and there's about $2 million in the bank.
So the sports complex is sort of banking the money until there's enough to bond it or something, is that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're banking it for both either bonding or operation. We, any of us were blessed with ARPA funds, but we got ARPA funds, and we got ARPA
Yeah.
funds because we went through a pandemic. We are using our ARPA funds, which is about 13 million. The city had some money that they had borrowed for the swimming pool, so they matched
Okay.
that 13 million.
Yeah.
And so that's 26 million. We think we'll spend more. That's staggering to me. We're going to build 11. The present plan is to build 11 universal turf fields
Okay, yeah.
that could be used for soccer or divided up in the diamonds. That's at least that's the latest thinking. I'm not on the Sports Tourism Commission anymore. And one of the things I learned is once I stepped away because frankly, after that, I'm just a fiscal court member. I'm just one of 4, and the money doesn't get spent until the majority of the 7 give the advice and consent. So I'm just kind of in the background now.
Sure. And how, go ahead.
But our city and county, we had to come back and do another interlocal agreement on the build, and we executed that about 2 months ago.
Okay.
I think our plan is to break ground in the summer of 2023, spring and summer.
And what
So
will
how-
you do? I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask one more question.
Mhm.
All right, outside of the sports facilities you were talking about, how many attractions, tourism attractions sit within the county? Outside of the city limit?
We've got a wildlife area that attracts a lot more folks than I anticipated.
Like a WMA or?
It's, I don't know how best to describe, yes, and they have dog shows. I've never been to a dog show. I mean, it's not like a pretty dog show. It's a, I'm gonna shoot this duck, you go get that duck, dog show.
Yeah.
And that attracts more people than I would have thought. And we got, Kentucky, like, we don't have a capital.
Not many do.
Yeah, I would think that would, I assume that creates quite a bit of tourism
It does. Yeah,
in Frankfurt. And we don't have much of a bourbon industry.
yeah, right.
They're trying.
Yeah, everybody is, everybody.
We don't have the same water y'all.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mike, if it's a room tax that you're banking now, is that $1 million a year or something like that, or? And is that gonna be used for bonds eventually?
Yes.
For the facility also?
So the agreement with the the city and the county loosely is, all right, we're gonna put in 13 or 12 and a half, I can't remember, I think it's 12 and a half, so the first 25 comes from. After that, we'll borrow what's necessary to complete. I suspect that's another 10 or more, and the million will go to 80% of that million will go toward debt service, and the city and county will make up the difference. We didn't want to leave the Sports Tourism Commission without any guarantee of revenue in case they eventually did need to hire a director, and they probably will. So other cities that have done this since, I think Murray and Callaway County have done this. And to be honest with you, Oak Grove is, I think they were the first, to my knowledge. I was representing the city of Oak Grove and talking to the mayor, and had just gotten elected commissioner, and so actually it was Oak Grove that put me onto this.
Do you care to walk me through the stacking? I don't quite grasp that.
Okay, so stacking, so as you know, there are two taxes in the county government that don't stack. One is the insurance premium tax, and the other is the occupation tax. However, these taxes, when I say they stack, it means that every hotel that is in the county will pay the 3% county tax. And every hotel that's in the city will pay the 3% county tax because they're also in the county, and they'll also pay a 3% city tax.
Thank you. I'm very new.
So currently the city's just collecting their 3% and not a county tax,
That's right.
It sounds like.
right?
And the city hotels pay, as well as the county hotels pay the fine arts tax.
Right.
At the sidebar.
Yeah.
The 2% is collected by the county from every hotel regardless of city limit, and all that kind of stuff.
And I would think you would want, I don't know, I would think you'd want to go to a monthly collection.
Most of those counties do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's easy, it would be easier to predict.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, from that regard.
and it'd be easier to know, all right,
I don't know why it was quarterly. I mean, it was done in the 80s, so I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody.
I think hotels prefer it if they can get it.
I'm sure they,
Then they can build up the money. Yeah. The business, yeah, but most don't allow it because they could also go bankrupt. And then they haven't paid the last 3 months.
we've had that.
We've had it.
Yeah.
As a taxpayer and a, just
Yeah.
for me, I
Yeah,
remember, I
no, I
would
get
want.
it. That gets into the ordinance change, which, just as a sidebar, we are working with both the city attorney and the county attorney on updating these ordinances. Because one, they haven't been rewritten or changed since the 80s, and two, on January 1, House Bill 8 goes into effect, and that's going to affect the ordinances for both the city and the county.
Remind me what House Bill is.
House Bill 8 is the KRS that kicks in that will require booking platforms like Airbnb and whatever to pay and submit the local taxes for those property owners, which to date, as you may be aware, has been, and Robert knows very well, has helped me a lot, is challenging.
Yeah, we
One,
entered,
because of lack of, most of it's not, they just don't know.
we entered an agreement with, I think it's Airbnb, one of the others. we
Some
entered an
cities
agreement.
could, yes, but we Airbnb, we couldn't. So, yeah, it's different. There's 5 or 6 cities in Kentucky that the platform does do that collection of local tax, but the rest of the state doesn't.
I did notice both the statute and the ordinance, because I was thinking that, I mean, you have a lot of senators and representatives who come up and stay, but I guess the 90 days gets them, but you should be able to collect some revenue from them on this short session because it's only 60 days.
Yeah, right.
So Eddie, ultimately, I mean, this isn't about taking from one person or another person. This is the big ticket item. This is about bringing tourism up in Franklin County across the board. Is that fair to say?
It is. I mean, this is a tool that the legislature has expressly given you that frankly, you're using one of the tools instead of two of the tools. You're leaving one of them in the corner.
Eddie, what do you do in McCracken County for the county tourism, for promoting all the facilities that are in the county? For tourism?
Yeah, at this point, the agreement has been that the city has taken on the mission of marketing the community. So Mary Hammond's, her budget didn't go down because the advantage we had that you don't have is that all of our hotels in McCracken County were both in the city and the hotel with the exception of one.
Right.
So the city, last month, I think the city made 100,000 and the county made 103,000.
So in McCracken County, then basically you really don't have those facilities. So you don't have anybody promoting those facilities yet. You just have within the city facilities for recreation. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have just signed about a year ago, signed an agreement with SFM. And I believe they're the same organization that runs the Elizabethtown Sports Park out of Florida. And so they will be running and marketing our sports park.
When I visited Elizabethtown, and I don't know whether it's the same firm, but they hired somebody to completely run it, not just promote it, but to maintain the fields and everything else there. Is that what you all will be doing as well?
Yes, that is the plan. And, because I think when Elizabethtown first opened that up, Judge, you may be familiar with, but I think they lost $1 million in the first
Tried to
year.
do it on their own.
Yeah. And they worked through that crisis with SFM, I believe.
You all are not able to get the restaurant tax, is that correct?
We are not able to because of we, like Frankfurt, was in 2010, had made the choice to be a second-class city. And the last statute I think it's on page 15, but essentially the last statute says only authorized cities can charge the 3% hotel. I'm sorry, it's page 18. And because you're not authorized, you're not allowed to do so. I will tell you that the city of Hazard, I don't think this is not attorney-client privilege. City of Hazard has reached out to me, and they're in Perry County. They are a third-class city, and I have drafted a complaint, which I think they intend to file later, sometime next year, challenging the constitutionality of the restaurant tax. Is maybe more than you want to hear, but the theory is that our Constitution actually contains Section 3 of our Constitution says legislature, you can't create special sets of men. Our argument is when you allow a city the size of Elizabethtown to charge a 3% restaurant tax, which creates $4 million of revenue a year. Think about that, $4 million of revenue a year. And you let them do it, but you don't let Paducah do it. And they're the same size. So there's no real rational basis why one gets to and one doesn't. Then you're creating a special city. And
But also, and I agree with what you're saying totally, but I think the other thing on that, if I'm not mistaken, is that if the law gets changed, which many of us agree it should, the option to enact that tax locally is voted on by the citizens. Is that correct?
So I think,
Restaurant.
I think the restaurant tax is a city tax. Presently, you gotta be an authorized city, and I don't think that gets voted on by the
You don't
residents.
have- Okay.
I think that's just a commission, but it's not a county tax. It's its existence, a city tax. So the concern of those who actually have the restaurant tax is they go, well, what if you win? You know, because it would invalidate the restaurant tax because it's, well, it's unfair. So the more palatable solution is, well, maybe we can convince the legislature to just fix it so it'll be fair before the Supreme Court says it's unfair, but that they've been waiting on that for 10 years. So I guess the theory is, do you want to go in a room where you got to get 51 people to agree with you? Or do you want to go in a room where only 4 have to agree with you, which is the Supreme Court? I'm a lawyer. I would rather try and convince the 4 people that I'm right rather than convince 51 people that I'm right. So far, we've been unable to convince 51 people that we're right. So I'm sure Perry County and the city of Hazard would be interested in having some co-plaintiffs in that case. which a prophet has no honor in his country, the scripture tells us. I can tell you, I've not been able to convince Paducah or McCracken County to have interest in hiring me in that case yet. So
I'm sure though that Robin, through all of her tourism folks across the state, are very much interested in this and seeing where this goes.
Yeah, we've been watching it for several years and trying to, make an even playing field. And of course, there was a lot of focus the last couple of years on other things, obviously. But I think that's going to come back up through the Travel Industry Association and the Association of Tourism Directors.
I think the handicap that the Convention Bureau has in that situation is that the most aggrieved parties are the second-class cities and Louisville. Louisville is aggrieved as well. They're not allowed to do it. And when you add up all of the representatives in the second-class city, you don't get to 51. And that's
Okay.
that's the problem. And,
Okay. Eddie, if through this process, the city of Frankfort says, we don't want to be a part of this. And that's just plain and simple. They don't want to be a part of it. The county moves forward, then, so that means that the monies aren't quite, well, they're only a third of probably what is being taken in. Did you all look at that as part of I believe I heard you say that you all thought that's the way you were going to go initially, and then the city came back in?
yes, so yeah, our initial, what we did is we passed a motion, or resolution, I guess, which really doesn't do anything, but it was a polite way of saying, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do this in 90 days. So everybody get ready. Probably takes more than 90 days. But it sounds like we had a little different scenario in which we were collecting the tax. All of it got collected by the county treasurer. And so and the city actually didn't have a transient room tax. So we were in a situation where once we decided to keep it, they would actually have no money. And that seemed to have a little lack of compassion with it. So we were really not wanting to go that route. What's different in your situation is if you just simply redo your ordinance, the city already has theirs, and you're not going to, you're going to reduce their budget, but you're not going to cut them off. And that's, I think we spoke last meeting about, there may be a situation that can be fixed by this is kind of a friendly divorce, and we pay some alimony to the existing CBD so that they don't have a loss of revenue.
And I think you mentioned, you were on the phone the other day, but here may be different than the Kraken.
Right.
We have 14 attractions that lie within the county, every one of our distilleries is in the county.
Yeah, and it's probably pretty important to promote that.
Yep.
And I would think the fiscal court wouldn't want you to stop promoting.
Right.
Robin, with that being said, in regards to the distilleries, for an example, how much money do you currently spend advertising for Buffalo Trace or for Castle and Key, which some, including myself, are kind of up in the air considering I feel like it's in Woodford County. But I know we do claim it to be Franklin County. I'm not sure if Woodford County advertises for Buffalo Trace or not, but how much money do you spend in advertising those?
I don't have specific numbers per attraction. We market the entire community and we spend, 60-70% of our budget marketing Franklin County and
Okay.
Frankfurt as a destination. And, we're marketing that all over the country.
So like for Strohmeyer's Campground, they're included in those destination and advertising.
Outdoor recreation.
Okay.
Arts, urban.
Forks of Elkhorn Campground, although those are destination.
Part of our.
Okay.
stay package. Yep.
Okay, okay,
Sure.
all right, good deal. Eddie, what I see is, again, I go back to the master plan. This was identified in the master plan. Hey, this would be the suggestion that you could take for financing to look at this. So that's where I see this coming into play at. Obviously, the county has a parks plan that's been approved. The city has a separate plan that's been approved. When it comes to those plans, it's more about commitment, right? Just, you voted on and you approved it, you liked it. Now there needs to be a commitment to those plans, correct?
That's a policy decision.
Okay.
What I see is, there's about 350. It sounds like, based on the numbers that we're playing with in this meeting, you could keep Robin completely, her organization completely funded $500,000 and have an extra $350,000 to either operate your own tourist commission or use for bond service. So that rough estimates, that probably allows you to borrow about $4 million. Pay debt service on about $4 million.
Right, yeah. And obviously, I think Robert spoke of it too. We've got more rooms coming. I think the city's got about 80 getting ready to come on board downtown. We're gonna have some come in the county. So that's just additional rooms coming on. That ultimately means more revenue.
You guys need a courtyard.
You need a-
You need a courtyard. And I like, you need more Marriott, right?
We're trying.
Marriott.
Yeah, put it right there.
Give them a call.
I probably shouldn't say it, but yeah, you need more hotels. And that goes beyond that. I'm sure Robert's got a plan for where you could put more hotels.
Yeah.
Disney has certainly taught us. When I was there, it is, I think they've taught the tourism industry, build your hotel where you want your kid to stay. And it's my hope that we'll have hotels situated near our 11 soccer fields so that parents could actually watch their kids run to the soccer field from the balcony.
Right.
That's pretty hard to plan your land that way in and after the fact process.
Eddie, what role do you all have a county park system, parks director, and staff?
We do not. Our county park system is essentially a collection of baseball fields and tennis courts that are truly out in the rural, and they are run by volunteers. We give them vendor funding of about $20,000 a piece. So, I don't really know how the land was acquired. That happened before me, but they're not a real expensive organization for us. So the short answer to your question is no, we don't have a parks director.
Okay. So we have two separate park systems, one city and one county at this point in time. I'm not sure how all of that would play into. I'm trying to figure out what the role of our parks department would be if we went to the sports tourism, and right now, the county's putting roughly $1 million into the county park system. And whether that would continue or where those monies would be from the fiscal court budget or from the sports authority budget.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be careful there because I could see the possibility of a taxpayer challenge to, hey, wait a minute, you're supposed to use this money for tourism. You know, nobody comes here for swings, you know, they come here for, you know, ball fields or things where they're actually spending the night. So, you know, that will be the ultimate policy decision, making sure that you're not just paying for green space that doesn't bring tourism.
Yeah, but with that being said, we also have a 9-hole par 3 golf course. We've got a driving range. There's several things, and I think Charlie can speak on it, other programs that are at our park.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the discussion as we move forward in this, and hopefully the legislature won't tweak our statute. That's always a possibility, but most of the spots that are succeeding in our nation have more than just a soccer field.
Mhm.
There's something for dad to do with the 12-year-old while mom's watching the 6-year-old play soccer, for example, which may be golf. You know, so.
Randy and Ed, what are the next steps? Today is just a conversation. And you're meeting with several different groups today, which we appreciate, but there's going to be a day of, okay, decisions and making this. How do you see that playing out, Ed or Randy, as we move forward after everybody has been talked to in one form or fashion?
Yeah, I would think the most important person in the room on this is Robin, and making sure that Robin and her operation feels secure in going forward, and probably have a good draft of an interlocal agreement with her agency before you move forward, would be my advice.
Okay. And Randy, how do you see your role playing out with the help of Ed or just yourself in seeing that we can get to that point?
Well, we're helping kind of get these things organized, and I think the process that we originally proposed was have these original kickoff meetings, these stakeholder meetings today, just to get basically have Eddie kind of explain the process, get some input, let everybody kind of digest this and think about it, and then come back and have a second round of stakeholder discussions once you've had an opportunity to process. Then once that happens, then Eddie goes back and starts putting together looking at the agreements, which he's already started doing, looking at the revenue streams, what kind of opportunities there are there, and draft the sports tourism commission proposal. And I think we've been pretty focused on the sports tourism piece of it. I know way back in some of those early discussions, there was some talk about the convention and possibly that being tied into this as well. So I think, and I don't know what conversations have been had about that. But I mean, to Eddie's earlier point, you can name it anything you want and focus on what you all want to do. So, but anyway, Judge, back to your original question. So that's kind of the process. And then once he's got the proposal or the document drafted to share with everyone, we'll come back and present that, make sure that we're all on the same page, everybody is in agreement with it, and then we'll present the final document to the city and the county.
Yeah, we haven't talked about convention center. The statute also allows a 1% So in addition to 3% or 1% for your convention center operations. So that tax could also stack. And so if you're getting, so that's probably about another $200,000 that could go toward the operations of the convention center, it sounds like. If you
Which we
think,
do not have.
yeah, which you don't have, and that would presuming that you
Yeah.
both pick the same one. I mean, I guess you wouldn't have, you could have a county convention center and a city convention center, but if you pick the same one, in our community, we have a joint convention center.
Right. Which.
I don't have, do you have anything that that closely resembles a convention center at present?
No.
Big barn or
We
something?
had a stage upgrade, and that was gone, torn down. The Tourist Commission commissioned a study in 2018, I believe it was, for a market analysis. And we have the results of that, which said that there is a market for a convention center in the downtown area, and I know the city's been very interested in that. And so.
And that may be where the win for the city is that there's some convention center money in the county that could go toward a city convention center. And I don't know that statutes, I haven't looked specifically at this. I don't know that the statutes define convention center in such a way that it has to be next to a hotel.
I haven't read that language. I do think there's language about something about location, but I'd have to look back on the statute.
I know I've been to a big building, and it may be yours, that certainly feels like a convention center when I'm in it.
Pretty small, again, ours, the statute we had could have been used if that used for the grant for a convention center. Our bond council says it can only, the only thing that can be done, used for to make debt service payments for you all. And that it required until 2032, so. But
I mean, if you were here in the past, you probably were in our convention center. There was a state-run facility that was torn down in 2018.
Yeah, I remember that story. But since then, there's something that hosts there's a large room.
in the Capitol Plaza Hotel, yes,
The
the
ballroom.
state financed the ballroom and meeting rooms there in 1983 with separate bonds.
Is it like a museum or something?
Oh, you're thinking of the history center.
History
Not
Center,
the
yeah.
meeting room, yes. The Thomas D. Clark Center has a large.
Feels like a convention center in there.
We changed the name.
And convention center, yeah.
I think we've got several people on, and I want to afford them the opportunity. It looks like most all of them are, except for Sean Pickens, are on your board, Robin. Jules Foster, Nathan and Allison Deppenbrock. We do have Rick Sparks on and Sean Pickens. Let's give them an opportunity to ask any questions they may have. I'll go with Sean Pickens first. Sean, do you have any questions, any you want to ask the group here?
Good morning, Judge. No, not right now. I'm scheduled to be there at 12:30 this afternoon with city manager and commissioner, so I can address anything then.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
What about tourist members, Jules Foster, Nathan and Allison? It looks like they're going to address. I think you all are going to be as well. Mr. Sparks, do you have something you want to say?
No, sir. Thank you. I appreciate being involved and having an opportunity to review this. I know that there are some other matters that we will have to address. Robin and I are going to meet on some changes on the statute that may or may not affect these. I think we're going to try to do that one day this week, maybe as early as Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to getting all this together and then making sure that all the parties have all the information so you all can do what is appropriate. But beyond that, no, sir. It's just nice to be here.
Okay. So in the room, any other questions, concerns, statements? Those in the back, Ann Northcutt, Robin, Bill Call. I think that's who I see back in the back. I can't see everybody, but any questions? All right. Randy, you and Ed are going to be meeting with some other groups this afternoon, and then we're going to hear back from you. How soon will it be when we hear back from you for the next step, Randy?
Well, we need to discuss that, and determine how quickly we can get some things turned around and when you all might, because really it's gonna be about getting the meeting scheduled and making sure that we can kind of get, enough people together. So I would say probably a couple weeks, Judge.
Okay, and you just contact Charlie. We can set up another park committee meeting as needed, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, is everybody comfortable with where we are at the moment and where we're trying to move towards in the future? Everybody okay with that? Michael Muller, you okay? Scotty Tracy, you're okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Judge, I am. I appreciate everybody for being here, especially Mr. Call and Robin. I think they helped a lot of the questions that have been out there. And, I know Amy's kind of new, but I think she'll do great. But no, I just appreciate the conversation. This is like Squire Tracy said, this is kind of part of the plan that we put into effect last year, and it's just the next step. So thank you, Judge.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else got anything to say? All right.
Sticking to our agenda, there's a section for other business. I want to throw that out there in case anybody has.
Go right ahead. Is there any other business? Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank-
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We look forward to hearing back from you, Eddie. Thank you for coming up. We appreciate it. You're a great help. Thank you. Great asset.